Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Influencers Radio. You know, today, so many people are focused on making money. You know, that seems to be how we define winning the game. But for my guest today, making money is really just the first step. It's what you do with the money to create positive impact in the world and leave a lasting legacy that really matters. He's an entrepreneur, an author, award-winning speaker and investor. He invests in real estate, startups, several funds exceeding $100 million. But he's also the founder of Thrive, Make Money Matter, which is an annual conference designed to teach entrepreneurs how to dominate in business and life while making the world a better place. And we're going to be talking about that today, but also how a lot of people can find themselves in the position to become an influencer, to have people listening to them and to make impact and make change and build them their business and themselves as an entrepreneur through some fairly simple ways. And that's what I'm really excited about getting into. So with that, today, my guest is Cole Hatter. Cole, welcome to Influencers Radio.
Thanks for having me, Jack. This is going to be fun.
It absolutely is because, anytime you see making money, that seems to be the phrase that gets people's attention. But what I love is, you go a lot deeper than just the making money. That's almost like that's the easy part. Right. Is the making the money. For you, it's just the first step, which, by the way, you have a reputation of being pretty good at.
Yeah, thanks.
But beyond that, it's about that giving back, that making an impact. So let's start with that.
Yeah. And you've done a good job of kind of setting it up and framing it that it is the beginning point. So what a lot of people or books or seminars or whatever, a lot of content out there has the narrative that success is the end goal, that let's work real hard, let's learn a few things, let's start a business, let's be successful. And then you've suddenly arrived where regardless of your age, you now float around on boats, drive Lamborghinis, get tan, and just play around the rest of your life. And what's interesting is I think that's the exact opposite, that arrival, quote unquote, of hitting a financial mark or success point is the beginning. Now you have the rest of your life to do something that actually matters. And so, this doesn't even have any like religious context in it, but I believe that we're not all here on earth to just sit around trying to make more money, to try to just buy a little bit more square footage in homes as we get more successful and maybe a little bit nicer car, better vacations, right? That's what the world has told us is where you're going to find happiness. But if just having stuff made people happy, then everyone with stuff would be. Not everyone is. And so what me and my tribe have decided is that it's not a matter of working real hard to accumulate stuff to then just tiptoe through life and arrive at our grave safely. What success should be is the starting point. Okay, cool. Now I don't have to worry about time or money anymore. Now I'm going to go out there and make my money matter. And so again, it's what you did a great job explaining. It's a race to be in that financial position as quickly as you can, because what I believe money is, and what it actually really is currency. It's something to use for trade. I can take $10 and trade it for a Happy Meal at McDonald's. I can take $100,000 and trade it for a brand new 7 Series BMW. So all money is a utility or a vehicle or a tool for giving us options. And so what we say is, hey, part of what we should be trading money for are things that actually matter. And that's the premise of making money matter. And I find people who are almost afraid to become successful because they feel guilty. Oh, there's so much need in the world. Who am I to want to live a crazy lifestyle? And what I always say is, hey, let's just say your dream life, Jack, is living off of $1 million a year, about 6 figures a month. There's not a lot you can't do. You might not own a private jet, but you can fly in one anytime you want. You might not own a hotel, but you could stay in the presidential suite. And so about 6 figures a month of just discretionary income to spend it any way you want is any dream style or dream life that anyone could ever want. So what I always say then, cool, go out there and make $2 million, live your dream life and give half your money away. And I'll bet you at the end of the year, although flying in private jets was fun, the thing that you'll be most happy with and find the most fulfillment in is that $1 million you used in whatever way you want, giving it to charity or feeding the homeless or building schools in third world country for children who have no access to education, whatever it is. So in a big picture scene, that's what making money is. And, for people who don't have money yet, they might say, oh, cool. Well, easy for you to say, Cole, and Bill Gates and not Donald Trump, who is it? Warren Buffett, who wants to give 99% of his money away. Bill Gates, who's already given over $30 billion away. People say, easy for them to do because they have so much. But it's very easy to also build it into your business model as you're going along, like Tom's Shoes. For any of your listeners who are familiar with Tom's Shoes, Blake Makowski, he's the founder of Tom's. And from day one, he said, for every pair of shoes I sell, I'm going to give a pair of shoes away. He didn't have any money. He wasn't already successful. He's now worth over $300 million. Tom's Shoes is a huge shoe manufacturer, and they are retailed all over the world. That being said, from day one, Tom's Shoes gave a pair away for every pair they sold. Fast forward a decade, it's made over $1 billion in total sales. And Blake Makowski, the founder of Tom's, is not only worth multiple nine figures now, but he made a difference along the way. And so that's what we teach people to do.
And I think that's, a lot of people would say, I'm in, that sounds great. That sounds, like something that I can buy into. But the hard part, how do we do that? So, for instance, the speakers that you have at Thrive, the people that you have as success stories they're teaching others about their success, they all seem to have the common, what's common about them is that they're influenced. They're authorities in their field. They're considered educators and advocates for the success of others. And so going back to what you said about people think, yeah, sure, it's easy. So instead of, we can't tell people, say, oh, okay, all you have to do is first just go make friends with Jack Canfield and Grant Cardone and Ty Lopez and Than Merrill, and then it'll work, right? Because that's a pretty tough nut to crack right there. What are some things that people that don't have that kind of reach, what are some of the things that they can do to start building up their credibility, building up the relationships with folks like that, where they're starting from now?
So I'll tell you how I did it. And then anyone listening to this can reverse engineer and figure out how this might work for them. And so step one was back in 2010. So just a quick recap on my business. I got started as an entrepreneur in 2005, did very well, lost everything in the recession because I was 100% in real estate. Every dollar I made and every dollar I was holding was real estate. Like I'd make a bunch of money in real estate and then I'd go buy real estate. So when the market crashed here in America, not only did my income source go away, so did all my assets. Right. And so I went back to zero. And in 2010, in the middle of that, I said, okay, I need to start not only number one, figuring out how to make money in real estate, whether it's going up or down, which I did, but number two, start diversifying. And, I looked at my career, and when I was making money, I was making oodles of it. I didn't have a Twitter. I didn't have an Instagram, and I had a Facebook just to see what my friends are doing. And I think I'd posted on it 3 times ever. Then I saw this guy named Lewis Howes, who stood on a stage at a random conference I attended that was about doing business online and all of that. And he talked about how he was literally making money through his social media channels, how he would talk about things on Twitter and Facebook and all this stuff, and that it would result in income for him. And then I never knew that existed. So I actually approached Lewis and said, hey, dude, I want you to teach me how to do this. And as I got deeper into that industry, I realized, and let me just stop and preface this by saying, your net worth has nothing to do with your human worth. So when I talk about people being influential and making a bunch of money, that doesn't make them a better person than someone who's not. But this is what I noticed, that there were people who are making way less than me online, and they had this huge social presence, and people would fall down at their feet and say, oh my gosh, let's just say a name, Bob. Oh my gosh, Bob, you're amazing. I literally worship the ground you're walking on. And Bob might be making $50,000 a year online, but he's done a very good job of being an influencer, where then here I am having in the height of my career made close to $1 million. This was first time around, and then I lost everything, and now I've made millions and millions of dollars. But from about 21 when I became an entrepreneur to 25, I was making multiple six figures a year, and nobody cared at all what I had to say. And I was like, okay, I made $700,000 last year. Nobody cares what I have to say. This guy makes $50,000 a year, and everyone falls down at his feet. And again, I'm not saying because I made more, I'm a better person, but something about being an authority or an influencer, of having an online presence I didn't have. And although I made way more money than some of the big influencers out there, nobody cared what I had to say. So step one was, Lewis, teach me this. And so he was a complete stranger. I want everyone to realize that, because somebody looks at me now and like, yeah, cool, you're friends with all these influencers, so it's easy. Just a few years ago in 2010, I was a nobody that anyone cared to hear from. And so I sat down with Lewis Howes and I paid him to teach me. We did a 90-day mentor thing where I was on the phone with him for 20 minutes a week, paid him thousands of dollars for that. And those 20-minute calls, I would just ask him 15, 20 questions. How do I do this? How do I do this? And it resulted in me creating somewhat of an online presence. That was step one. And then I slowly but surely started becoming more public in what I was doing as an entrepreneur. So people were actually curious with what I had to say. And then that relationship with Lewis Howes connected to another guy named John Lee Dumas, who is another big influencer, has a big podcast. And he and I paid him to coach me. And again, someone might say, oh, cool, you've got the money to coach them. That's not necessarily the point. The point was I invested in relationships. I know a lot of people who are very close with both Lewis and John Lee Dumas who haven't given them $1. And so now I had Lewis and John teaching me how to become more influential, teaching me how to not become successful because I already was, but teaching me how to have conversations like I'm having with you right now, Jack, of why anyone would even care what I have to say. And then that started developing. And now that I was friends with Lewis and friends with John, I met other people like Adam Braun, and I met other people like Jordan Harbinger. And then I was through them through Lewis Howes introduced to Tucker Max because I wanted to write a book. And Tucker Max has a company that helps people write books. And so my network, one person at a time, slowly but surely over the next 4 years, started changing, where now I could flip through my phone and some of the biggest influencers in the world not only knew who I was, we were friends. Then it came to the point where I wanted to do Thrive. And so I took all the most influential people I had, like Lewis Howes, like John Lee Dumas, like Jordan Harbinger, like Adam Braun. And I said, hey guys, I want to do a conference, and here's the premise. And it was different. And that's something else I was going to say. How do you get somebody like Jack Canfield to want to do an event with you? There are 10 trillion events a year. I made mine different. And the whole thing is about becoming successful to make a difference. And the event itself, I don't make any money off of. And we'll come to the economics of that in a minute. But I took the 5 or 6 people that in the last 4 or 5 years I'd become friends with. So that's another thing I want to emphasize, is that this didn't happen overnight. It took me years of silently grinding this out. And I got all of them to say that they would do Thrive. So now I had a nice little lineup of 5 or 6 people. Well, Lewis Howes and John Lee Dumas are friends with Gary Vaynerchuk. So I said, will you guys give me a warm intro to Gary? They said yes. I explained to Gary that all of them were coming and what we were doing and why it was different. He said yes. So now that I had Gary Vaynerchuk, I went one further and got Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank to say yes. So now I had my 4, 5, or 6 very influential friends that I'd made over the last 4 or 5 years say yes to Thrive. Through them, I got an introduction to Gary and got him to say yes. And then through that lineup, just cold reached out to Robert Herjavec's team and said, look at this conference. Look who we already have. He said yes. Now that I had Gary, Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank, and my 5 or 6 friends, now it was easy. Now people that we launched the website were asking me if they could speak. So that's how I did Thrive. I went to my warm network of people who were influential that took me years to develop those relationships. And I know that maybe everyone was hoping for some secret sauce like, oh, I just went to this website and it happened. But what a lot of people don't realize is that for those of us who are successful, there were years of work before we ever came up. Speaking of Gary Vaynerchuk, I watched a YouTube video of him where he says, guys, I've been an entrepreneur since 14 and I didn't record my first episode of Wine Library TV until I was like 32 or something like that. And he's like, literally, there was like 17 years of me working my freaking butt off that nobody knew about or cared about. And that's the foundation that he became influential on, is that he had actually gone out there and created success first so that now people cared what he had to say and became highly influential. And so I did that in my own way of grinding out, getting into these influential circles. And that's how I built Thrive. And so back to your original question, how does someone just become friends with a guy like Ty Lopez, who coincidentally, I don't know when this is going to air, but you'll see this online by the time it does. Ty and I are literally hopping in a helicopter in about an hour and a half, and we're going to go fly around and tour real estate properties, right? And so Ty is a friend of mine now. And so how do you get these friends? It's one step at a time. It's investing in relationships. How do you do an event like Thrive? It's because it's different than the other events that are out there. I don't make $1 off of Thrive. I make all my money in my businesses. So Thrive teaches people to make money matter, and it itself makes money matter by giving 100% of proceeds away to a nonprofit every year that it happens. And because that's different, the influencers like Jack Canfield, this year we have Jack Canfield speaking. We have Grant Cardone speaking. Like you said, Than Merrill, they say, this is awesome. I get pitched to speak 1,000 times a year, but you're the only one that gives all the money away. The message of what you're teaching of having people be successful to make the world a better place, I'm in. I want to be a part of something like that. So that's exactly how I did it. Let's break that down into actionable steps for your audience. I think step one of becoming influential or getting influential friends is not first pointing cameras at yourself, because anyone with an iPhone can try to position themselves online as an influencer, but actually go do something worth talking about. Go work, go build a business, go become successful, genuinely successful. And now people care what you have to say. And what's interesting is the more successful you become and the more of an influencer you become, your network changes as well. So that was a long answer, but I feel pretty passionate about the topic. So, you can ask as many questions about that as you want, Jack.
Well, I think that's what I'm going to have to do, because I want to put a spotlight on a couple of things you said, just so people don't miss some of this. Because, one, I think is the big one is you don't have to go out and become friends with, 25, 30 celebrities or business celebrities or influencers in their fields. Kind of to recap, what you did is you go out and build these relationships with 3, 4 of these, and that's what kind of creates a domino effect to all these. So you didn't have to go out and do a personal reach to try to build these relationships with 25. Once you build the 4, then it kind of starts building on its own, right?
Yeah. And so podcast is awesome. I had a podcast for about a year, and then I had my second child, and I just got busy. And so I sucked at continuing it up. But here's the deal. I had amazing guests on my show, just like you have. And if I called Tony Horton, right, I had him on my show. He's the creator of P90X. If I just called him and said, hey, can I ask you questions for an hour and pick your brain? There's no way the guy would have ever taken the time to talk to me, just mentor me for an hour. But when I say, hey, it's a podcast, I'm going to interview you and share this with the world, they clear their schedule. And so for anyone who's listening to this and has a podcast, yourself included, you know that that's one way to thrust yourself into the attention of influencers, because these people are too busy to take an hour of their life to give you their best content. But as soon as you record it and call it a podcast, they clear their schedules. And so what I found that an event did is that times 10. People who I never had a shot of becoming quote unquote buddies with, like Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. Can you imagine? I probably would have never, ever been able to get on the phone with him, because he is a quote unquote celebrity entrepreneur who is in the business of funding people's ideas. I guarantee you the Robert Herjavec office gets thousands of requests a week of, hey, Robert, I didn't get on the show Shark Tank, but you've got to see my company. It's going to be such a success. He is probably so bombarded that he has 19 gatekeepers. But I threw this event called Thrive. Not only did he come to me and sit on my stage with me, and I got to let him speak for an hour and then ask him 30 minutes of Q&A, but we then afterwards hung out for about an hour backstage. We exchanged email addresses and have emailed back and forth since and have direct contact with each other. So through the traditional route of just knocking on Herjavec's door, I would have never, ever gotten through his gatekeepers, because I would have been one of a million people a year trying to do that. As soon as I threw an event, I got him to get an airplane and come to me. And so leveraging podcasts is an easy way to do that, because there's very little upfront cost. Throwing an event like Thrive is not cheap, but the point is, and you know this on your podcast, is to get in front of influencers. one of the best ways to do it, to grow that network, is to do something like a podcast or like an event or something like that, a mastermind, where now someone like a Ty Lopez or a Than Merrill will actually take time to sit down and talk to you. That's step one. And then step two is to somehow connect with them in a way that there is a reason to have an ongoing communication. Instead of just ending the podcast and saying, thanks for your time, goodbye, or ending the event, giving them a high five and saying peace, to somehow, some way in that interaction, have there be a reason for follow-up, right? Even if it's like, hey, at my events, I give them all the video footage. And so I say, hey, where do you want me to send this? How do I get a hold of you? And it's just saying, hey, Robert Herjavec, I've got you. You're here. After you get off stage, you're going to hop on your private jet and fly away. But I don't want you to, metaphorically fly out of my life. How can we stay connected? And so that's the point, is number one, find a platform where you can get an influencer's attention. And then number two, while you've got it, have a clear plan of how you will maintain that attention and then turn that into a friendship or relationship. And then again, as of recording this, it's only 2016. 2010, I knew nobody. But now when you go through my phone, there's people like Herjavec. And I don't say this to brag, right? Because the premise of this phone or this interview is to talk about influencers and being influential. So I certainly am not a name dropper and don't flaunt this stuff, but to show that it's possible for anybody listening to this. Just 6 years ago, nobody knew me or cared. Fast forward to today, and now I have some of the most influential people in the world's personal cell phone numbers in here who I text and call and just chit chat about life, not even business. Just, hey, how's life going? How's everything? How are you? How can I, help you? Is there anything I can do? With some of the biggest, most influential people in the world, and that's happened inside 6 years. Not 6 months, 6 years, but even still, 6 years is pretty quick to get from nobody knowing who I am or caring to now being buds with people like, again, Gary Vaynerchuk, Herjavec, and others.
Well, you brought up, I think, a critical point that I think a lot of people miss or skip, ignore, is that most people, even in those extraordinary circumstances of meeting these people or working with these people, speaking with them, that relationship ends with, hey, can I get a picture with you? Cool, great. I'll use this to spread all over the place, right? And that's the extent of the benefit. But I think you've just pointed out there's a lot further that you can go with that.
Absolutely. So let's make that an action item then of what we just uncovered together, that if you're going to get an influencer's attention, you're only going to have it for a minute, right? Like a podcast or on stage. So you should have a clear plan in advance of how you're going to do that. Check this out. So one of my speakers at Thrive this year, his name's Luis Ortiz. He's one of the stars of Bravo's $1 Million Listing New York. And we don't have time to go into the details, but he and I have about 18 different connection points. And he's in an interesting transition in his career right now, where the season finale of the last season of his show, he quit real estate. He's at the pinnacle of the real estate career, makes millions of dollars and has his own reality show. He quit his real estate business and the reality show to go and pursue his passion, which is exactly mine as well. And so as just a fan of Luis Ortiz, who sits on my couch and watches $1 Million Listing, because I'm in the real estate world, and so the very few bits of TV I watch are almost always real estate related. I'm just a random dude who he doesn't know or care about, right? Because he's a big deal. He's on TV. He's got things going on. But he's coming to San Diego. He's going to be one of my speakers. And I already have 2 different dinners set up with him where I now am going to have 90 minutes each time. So 3 hours total of one-on-one Luis time to talk about his transition and have a couple of ideas I have for him and connections, relationships I have for him to help him further his career. And so Luis is going to be great on stage. And it's, I'm like showing my cards right now, but that's totally okay. He's going to be great on stage. But the reason I have Luis Ortiz speaking at Thrive is because after Thrive, I want to do business with him. So I said, here's what I'll do. I'll ask him to come and speak at Thrive. That's how I'll get his attention. But while I've got him in a hotel room in San Diego, I'm going to set up time for he and I to one-on-one talk about the transition he's in, talk about where he's going, talk about how I know I can help him and what my ideas are. And I don't know how that'll happen because that's 5 days from recording this podcast. He might tell me to piss off and never talk to him again, but I'll bet fast forward a year from today, somehow, some way, Luis Ortiz and I will be involved with one another outside of having just done this event together. So I'm in real time doing this right now. So the action item is, when you have that brief second of an influencer's attention, have a plan of how after that conversation you will be able to continue the conversation with them, so that you're not just a random person in the world, but you're someone that they see as a peer and even a friend.
You know, I love the way this conversation is unfolding because with the action items, because these are truly action items that I think anyone can put into place. One thing that I want to bring up that I think, you know, could be subtly missed is something that I think has changed even dramatically over the last 10 years. And you mentioned it is not just turning a camera on yourself, you know, and talking about you and the great things that you do. All the people you've mentioned, every single name that has been brought up today, the common thread amongst them is they're not out there yelling and screaming, hey, look at me, I'm an expert. Their first and foremost message is educating and be an advocate for the success of others. Where 10 years ago, the common theme was, you know, you want to be an expert, you got to go out there and tell people you're an expert. And I don't hear you ever telling people you're an expert. I don't hear the people that we've mentioned today out there that are spending most of their time telling people they're an expert. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't think I've ever seen him say, hey, I'm an expert, but people instantly recognize them or see all these people as an expert because of what they say and what they've done and the actions they've taken. Can you go into a little bit deeper in that and how people can maybe make that shift of thinking they have to try to convince people they're the expert versus being that educator and advocate for the success of others, which it seems can, you know, grow your status as an influence exponentially over just putting the camera on yourself and telling people what an expert you are?
They say that bees and dogs can sense fear. The general public can sense whether you're authentic or not, or whether you actually know what you're talking about or not, right? Whether there's a level of integrity or authenticity in your message. And so it is, and I'm not going to knock people, but there is a lot of noise right now because it is so freaking simple to get an iPhone, to record yourself talking into your iPhone like you're some type of an expert, and then put it in social media, use some, you know, Facebook retargeting ads. And now all of a sudden you're in everyone's news feed talking, you know, standing in front of something that looks good, like a big house or a nice car. And then, oh my goodness, everyone thinks you're a genius. And what I think that people should really understand is there's no way to cheat your way to the top. If you're a person listening to this right now who considers yourself successful because you're a quote unquote 6-figure business owner, like if I find another person that promises me they're going to teach me how to make 6 figures, I want to punch myself in the face because I've made 7 figures the last 6 consecutive years, right? So, but you're one of, you know, those people who say, I'm going to teach you how to make 6 figures. And then I say, well, do you make 6 figures? And then you would say, oh yes, of course. And I say, cool. Where do the 6 figures come from? If it all just came from teaching people how to make 6 figures, I call that a straight up fraud. And so there are people out there who will claim to teach the world how to be successful, and they themselves do make okay money. They're making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, but every one of those dollars they make is from teaching someone how to be successful. And so if you're successful only because you're teaching people how to be successful, not because you actually started something that matters, it's not going to last for long. You've built yourself on a house of cards. Something that people, I don't think, realize is that life is really freaking long, and you're going to be an entrepreneur for maybe 50 years, right? Or in your career for maybe 50 freaking years. And right now doing some quick hustle where for the next 24 to 36 months, the world buys your crap because they think you're an influencer, and then realizes, wait a second, you don't have an original thought. It's just a bunch of platitudes or, you know, recited stuff that you heard on podcasts and read in books, and there's no original content coming out of you. You're going to fizzle out. And so in order to not do that, and if you're in that position, you might not have known better, because I think that the people that make the most noise out there, like you were just saying, Jack, are those people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who has VaynerMedia that will do over 100 million this year, doesn't have to try to convince you he's successful because he actually really is. And I think that the step that people need to realize is, as fun as it would be to have a lot of followers on social media, and as fun as it would be to be considered an influencer, if you want it to last, you first got to go do something. You need to start that thing that matters. And when you look at the top influencers out there, we keep using Gary or Hershevek or any of them. Let's talk Hershevek. He's now all over the place because he's a star on an Emmy award-winning TV show called Shark Tank. But before anyone cared or knew who Robert was, obviously he had some great PR, he had started the Hershevek Group, which was doing over $100 million a year in private security. So driving to work without a Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, nobody knew or cared who Robert Hershevek was. He was an immigrant from Yugoslavia who now is a Canadian national that just worked his ass off and had some success. Cool. Nobody cared. But now all of a sudden that he's on Shark Tank, he's a big deal. Yet there are decades of him working his butt off first. So back to the point of there are people out there who are pleading with the world, you know, I promise you I'm really successful, so please buy my ebook. And now that you're in my funnel, please buy my low barrier entry level product of $97. And now that you've got that, please buy my upsell of $5,000 because I've got a mortgage to pay. People are going to figure that out. Even if you've got great branding and great marketing, you'll get attention, you'll get an audience, but you'll fizzle out. Go do something awesome first. Now, from your personal experience of actually building something that matters, go talk about that. I've never heard Gary Vaynerchuk ever talk to me about real estate because it's not his past. It's not his vertical. He doesn't pretend to be an expert in real estate. He talks all things social media strategy, how to be a social media influencer, because he runs a company that does $100 million a year in that space. You don't hear me talking about that because I don't do social media even personally. I have somebody that handles my social media for me. You do hear me talk about real estate and investing because that's where I've made all my money. So the point is, to be a legitimate expert, here's the catch. You've actually got to be an expert. And how do you become an expert? You go out there into the real world, into the real economy. You create real value. You make real money through the value you've created. And then you share your experiences publicly on social media, Twitter, things like that. And now all of a sudden people care, and you'll build a legitimate Thrive that follows you, stays with you, and actually learns from you and doesn't say, wow, when I listen to this guy, it's a little bit of this podcast, a little bit of this book. It's just this recited platitudes of what it feels like or looks like to be successful. So that's a bit of a rant, but I feel passionate about this because I don't want to call people out and say you're a bunch of frauds. I think someone defrauded you. And if anyone out there is listening to this who is in that position, I think someone defrauded you and thinking that that's what success looks like. So step one, go do something that matters, that is truly successful, that actually you have experience in. And then number two, talk about it. And the byproduct is becoming influential.
One thing that let's turn that around a little bit and look at it at some different angles, because I think this is huge. It's a huge point. And when you say you go out and do something that matters or be successful at something, and I know you said earlier in the show that doesn't necessarily have to equate to a certain dollar amount. Right?
Totally.
And so I think there's also some people out there that withdraw and don't put themselves out there when they could be an influencer because they think that success is defined by, I can't go out there and teach people what I'm doing until I make $1 million at it. But success can be defined that, you may be somebody that's, started your own local handyman service, whatever. You might be making $200,000 a year, and that could be the benchmark for success, and you're fully qualified to call yourself an expert at that. And there's nothing wrong with making $1 million teaching other people how to make $200,000 if you're up front and you have, and that's what you've done and you're showing them the real way to do that, right? I want to make sure that people don't think that before they can start trying to be an influencer, they have to go make $1 million, $10 million or something.
Yeah.
You're saying that they need to be successful at what they do. And there's plenty of people out there that their benchmark for success may not be making $1 million. Their benchmark for success might be, to $50,000, $100,000. And if that's what you've genuinely done, there's nothing wrong with making a lot more money showing people how to do that, right?
Right. Yeah. And so maybe I should soften my tone and clarify exactly what you said. There's no dollar amount that gives you the right to teach. I think that teaching has become a passion of mine. And I think that those of us that are called to teach, we're a unique breed, yourself included, people who host podcasts to teach the world by bringing guests on and even your own original thoughts. And so there isn't a benchmark that gives you the right to teach. What I'm trying to emphasize is the authenticity authenticity of, if you're going to be a teacher, you need to know what it is you're talking about. So back to what I said, that your net worth has nothing to do with your human worth. Let me add to that. Your net worth has nothing to do with your ability of being a great teacher or influencer. That's for sure. The point is, if you're going to teach, you need to have done, and not just teach to make money, but teach to show people the journey you've traveled and how to avoid the pitfalls and some of the mistakes that you made yourself along the way, how to shoot for some of the success that you've enjoyed along the way. That's all. And so, so let me make sure I'm clear, because, again, I'm 32 years old. I didn't make $1 million until in my mid 20s, right? Which is still pretty young. I get it. But the point is, does that mean that I was a total worthless human being at 23 when I hadn't made $1 million yet? No, I had a lot of experience already at 23 that people can learn from. So I think maybe I should rephrase it. And what I really want the listener to take away from whether they have the right or not, or should or not try to become influential and teach, is teach from a position of authenticity, of integrity, of not just a bunch of books and stuff you've read but not actually used. Teach from the position of what you've done, and then don't overreach, right? Like you just said, if you've never made 6 figures in a year, I don't think you have a right to teach someone how to make 7 figures in a year. If you've never even made 6 figures yourself, I think that there's a lot of people out there that do that. So if you want to put dollars on it, it doesn't matter whether you've made 6 figures or not. It doesn't matter whether you've made 7 figures or not. But if you've not yet personally experienced something, you shouldn't teach something you haven't yet done. That doesn't mean you can't teach someone how to work from home. Let's say that you make 80 grand a year and you want to teach people how to work from home. Go own it. Go crazy. But don't, if you're making 80 grand a year, teach someone how to make 7 figures a year. That's, I think, the point I'm trying to make. So everybody has a right to teach. And I think if you have a message that will inspire people or give people content that can dramatically impact the quality of their life, then you have a responsibility to teach it. If you know how to do something that will improve someone's life, by not sharing it, you're robbing people. So do share. But don't BS people, if that makes sense. So the only time dollars matter to me, Jack, is for people who say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to have levels of success that the teacher themselves has never yet personally experienced. That's where I have a problem.
Yeah, well, I think what you just outlined there is going to change a lot of people's thoughts on this. And I think it's going to, perhaps have people rethink what they're doing, if they are going beyond, they're reaching beyond what they've actually generally can teach. But I think you've also just encouraged people that have something that can truly inspire others and to benefit others, to go out there and teach it regardless of what that dollar figure is.
I think people have a responsibility to share that. Absolutely. And let me just add another 30 seconds on that last thought, that the whole point of this isn't to wave my finger at you and say, shame on you or anybody, because one listener might actually be in the demographic of what I'm explaining. Here's the point. The question originally was how to become influential, and how in these last 10 years things have changed, and how to remain, like Gary will always be considered an influencer and not one of these people who was big and then fizzled out. If you want to become an influencer who people regard you as someone to listen to and learn from, these are the steps. And we've focused on what not to do and what you should be doing. And so let me just, again, reiterate the fact that for anyone out there who wants to become influential and stay influential, and in 10 years from now still have a brand and not be here today and in 2018 no one remembers who you are, it's a matter of doing the legwork first up front. And that's what I'm trying to everyone has a right to teach. Everyone has a right to be an influencer. But if you want to stay at the top, it's a matter of putting in the work first.
We've talked about the importance of, creating strategic relationships. And I think that word strategic is important, that it's not about the quantity of the relationships. It's the quality of building a few strategic relationships and connecting with those high level influences, which in turn can build your own credibility, your own, influencer positioning as well. Let's say that, you have somebody that is listening to and thinking, I need to go to a Thrive event. I need to go there. There's going to be in the same room with some incredibly influential people, not just the people on stage, but my guess is there's a lot of influencers that are there in attendance as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's crazy is the audience itself has members sitting in it that quite frankly should be on stage. And that's funny. Two of the speakers this year were attendees last year. They just showed up to learn last year, and this year they're actually on stage. So what's interesting about having a lineup like we have at Thrive of usually an event will have a dozen or so speakers. We have 27. And then usually of the dozen or so speakers, 9 of them you've never heard of, 2 of them you're vaguely familiar with, and 1 or 2 are the rock stars. All of ours are rock stars. So when you have an event of the caliber of speakers we have, and again, I don't say this to pat myself on the back, I'm extremely blessed that this many influential people are moved by the message of Thrive, that they're willing to come. Like, I've never yet even still met Jack Canfield. So let me be clear. I'm not homies with the guy yet. I have, again, pre-planned out how he and I will maintain a friendship beyond Thrive. But when I see him at my event, that will be the first time we've ever met in person. And so I'm honored and blessed to have that level of speaker come. But at the same time, when you have that level of lineup of speakers, it attracts that level of attendee. There will be people there who work part-time, who have never done a business in their life coming to Thrive, who want to be inspired and who are entrepreneurial. But there are also people, I won't say his name, but one of our attendees last year, who I've since become friends with after Thrive, he won the X Prize of Peter Diamandis. It's the $1 Million X Prize challenge. This guy is retired. He was in the oil industry and has made oodles of cash. And he's sitting in my crowd, already retired, already having won the X Prize of Peter Diamandis, having made, again, gazillions of dollars. And he was just one of over 400 attendees last year that just sat there to listen. And so the whole spectrum of people attend, but some of the biggest influential, most successful people are going to be sitting with attendees, shoulder to shoulder in the crowd.
So let me pull one more action item out of you if I can. Let's say someone's attending. Somebody listens to this and they, I got to get there. I need to attend. What do you recommend they do with this opportunity beyond what we talked about, just snapping a picture with somebody? What would be the way to get the most out of that?
You're gonna hear at Thrive way too much information to be able to use it all, right? I mean, it's 3 full days. It's roughly 25 hours of content. So I would start with the goal of saying, I want 2 to 3 things I can do immediately, 2 to 3 things I can implement in the next 90 days, and 2 to 3 things I'll implement in the next 6 months. You should have realistic goals of saying, hey, listen, I don't want to be overwhelmed, because I've done this before where I go to a conference and I learned so much I don't know where to begin. But if you start with the mindset of, okay, I'm going to pull out 2 or 3 things I do, like the conference in Sunday, I'm going to put this into business Monday. Then 2 or 3 things I'll do the first quarter of next year. And then 2 or 3 things I'll do in the second or third quarter of next year. That's it, number 1. And then number 2, you should have a way to develop these relationships. At Thrive, we have some very unique things like a networking lounge and networking events like a VIP dinner and a Halloween party this year. And so we set up the environment for people to not just exchange business cards on the way to the restroom, but actually build relationships. We don't say that it's networking. We say it's relationship building. And so I would go with a way of capturing relationships, not lead capture. That's different, of being able to quickly engage with the people you're with. There are people that went to Thrive last year who are now business partners. And I think there's people who are not yet married, but now engaged. And so who knows, your next spouse can be at the next conference you go to. You never know. And so I would go there with the expectation of a couple of quick action items, mid and then long-term action items, long-term being about 6 months. And then also wanting to make 10 to 15 quality relationships of what you need. Like this year going to Thrive, it's my own event, but I'm looking for 2 or 3 people to actually hire in my company this year. So that's kind of cool that I will literally be going through my own audience, shaking hands with my own attendees. And there are 2 open positions in my company that I am hoping to by Sunday hire and offer full-time jobs with me. And so I know my goal at the end of Thrive personally is to have those action items that I can implement in my business again immediately about this 3-month mark and the 6-month mark. And then I am strategically going to be asking questions to try to find 2 people to hire in my business.
That it's just remarkable to me to see, what you've done and how you've impacted people, and you've clearly impacted a lot of people, and you're a hero to a lot of people. And of course, every hero, people want to know what the origin story was behind that. So if I could take just a couple of minutes to talk about this, because when you say, you're 20 something years old, made your first million doing real estate, even though you lost that, what was it that drives someone at that age to become the person they need to become to even generate $1 million?
I was a firefighter originally. So I, in high school at night and on weekends, took a college classes to do all my prerequisites so that when I graduated high school, I went right into my fire academy, went off to become a firefighter. 2 years later, I got a car accident. I was ejected from a car. They estimated going 80 miles an hour. And so I got extremely hurt. They didn't think I'd survive. I obviously did. But I had a really rough recovery. I had to learn how to walk again. I had a traumatic brain injury, so I had to learn how to learn again. And I was, there were others in the accident that did not survive. So I had tremendous grief of losing people, and I had the reality of having to start my life over again. And at 21 is when this happened. I didn't know whether I'd ever physically be healthy enough again to be a firefighter, which, praise God, I had a full recovery. But in this season of sitting in a wheelchair, going through therapy, learning to walk again, I never knew whether I would or wouldn't. And so I needed to turn to entrepreneurship to be able to financially provide for myself. And so found real estate, and that's what got me started. The motivation of success that I have comes from, number one, it coming from a place of necessity. I need to become self-sufficient. I don't know if I never get out of a wheelchair, who's ever going to want to hire me, and what limitations I have on career opportunities, right? Sitting at a desk would obviously work from a wheelchair, but the point is I didn't want to ever rely on anybody. But then the other reason of why I have the drive or the passion to do as well as I've done. And I take that compliment and I appreciate that, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be, right? And I don't think anyone ever is as an entrepreneur. It's like they say, it's a journey. It's not a destination, but it's because I want to honor those that I lost in the accident. So we were all 21. I made it. They didn't. And they only had 21 years. And so I said, okay, I don't know how much time I have. Maybe another 21 years myself. Maybe I'll live till 85. I don't know. But with every minute I have, I'm going to make it count for you guys. And back to the beginning of this whole conversation, I found out pretty early that volunteering time is the most precious resource and asset we have. But if I had a few $1 million I didn't have to worry about, not only would I have the time to volunteer, I'd have the money to write checks, right? Because anyone on here who's not in the financial position to write checks to charity or your church or whatever you believe in, that's cool. You can give your time. But guess what? What if you could build a school or a hospital? Or let's say you're super involved at your church and you help cars park when they arrive in the morning. What if you could just buy that building for your church so they don't have to pay to lease it anymore? So something about having money and a philanthropic heart puts you in a really powerful position. And so that's what I do. I work my butt off and I live a great life. I'm not, some martyr that gives all my money away, but I give enough away that I know that when my time is done, I can look back on my life, on the opportunities I was given, the relationships I had, the moments I lived, and the resources I was blessed with, and be proud of the decisions I made with them, so that, again, my life actually did something meaningful. And I wasn't just some entrepreneur, consumer capitalist that bought stuff for myself, but I was this philanthropic business owner that leveraged my businesses to make a world a better place. And, I say this in my video right now on Thrive is when people are at my funeral, because that day will come someday, no one is going to talk about my cars, my houses, my vacations. I want them to fight over the microphone to talk about the meaningful impact I made in their lives. And so having that touch with death, if you will, and that reality that time isn't promised, it's a gift. I decided to make the most with the time I had, and turning that insane amount of energy onto entrepreneurship has resulted in millions of dollars. And, I say that grateful and obviously realizing that it's been a struggle. It's been a battle. I made hundreds of thousands, lost it all, and then made millions. So it hasn't been easy. But I think what separates those of us that are successful like yourself versus those that might not is we all fail. I know, Jack, you've had probably tremendous failures. So have I, but we just keep going. It's just like we just keep going. We don't stop. And there's nothing special about successful people other than maybe they have a higher tolerance for failure. And I have failed 10 times more than I've succeeded, but my successes have paid me 1,000,000 times more than my failures. And that's a good ratio. And so I just keep going at it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's definitely why I consider you an influencer, beyond an influencer, because what you do doesn't just affect the people that you teach and you speak to directly. It's that passion and drive that, that brings you to provide a platform like Thrive that educates and empowers entrepreneurs to, not just make money and live their lives running their companies, but also teach them to go out. And this is, I think, what multiplies your efforts for themselves to make a difference, in the world. And that's just, tremendous. So you're absolutely, without a doubt, an influencer in this world, probably far beyond what you can even conceive.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
What can people do to find out more about Cole Hatter, to find out more about Thrive?
Thrive is attendthrive.com. Anything you'd ever want to know about the conference can be found on the website. And me, it's probably social media is best. I have a website, colehatter.com, but social media is best. And I am at Cole Hatter on everything: Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. It's all at Cole Hatter, one word. So if they want to, you can just Google me, I guess, and find everything: Thrive, Cole Hatter, and all that.
All right. Fantastic. We'll definitely have links to those on the show post. Cole, I want to thank you for taking this time to come on and share this.
Thanks for having me, Jack. It's been fun.
Folks, there you have it. Check it out, colehatter.com. Find them on social media, attendthrive.com. I encourage you, if you have a chance to get out there and do that, it's something that is potentially, and I would bet will be, life-changing. So check that out as well. Until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.